Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, maybe good morning. All of you who are watching today, we have a very special guest. I can say that he's a community favorite from all of the founders, all of the feedbacks we had so far. Anthony Rose, founder and CEO of SeedLegals. Thank you for
Hello,
being
thank you
here,
so much
Anthony.
for having me. I'm delighted. I know you say that to everyone, but I'm delighted to.
No, actually, you are the favorite for all the pitch events and all the great feedback you did. That's kind of a third, fourth event together. So that's great. And all of your background and knowledge is very appreciated here in the channel. Thank you very much, Anthony, for being here. Would you like to say a few words about yourself, present about yourself in Seed Legals for our audience? Maybe some people don't know you yet. I find it unlikely, but that's possible.
All right, absolutely. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I go back some time. So let me give you in like 3 minutes, like the full story, because it's quite fun. So I'm originally from South Africa. My background is electronics. As a kid, I was building circuit boards when I was still at university. I had a robot machine for making circuit boards and a hot belt reflow machine for making surface mount circuit boards and so on. Not in my room, or I would have had lead poisoning, but in my study. And in the days before there was venture capital, you had to borrow money usually from your parents and then make a profit and then build a business. And then we moved from Cape Town to Australia, and I rebuilt the business. And then it got into real-time 3D graphics. And then it got morphed, in a long story that we won't have time for, into Kazaa. For those old enough to remember it, Kazaa, the music file sharing service with millions of users. And then one day, the BBC called and said, how would you like to head up to the UK and head up iPlayer? I went, the BBC, where are the stock options? But I was excited through Kazaa. It was building a platform with millions of users every day. And I was looking forward to moving from, music and audio into video. And so in 2007, I moved to the UK, I headed up iPlayer. It was a big success. And then it was time to get back to startup roots. So I built a company, sold it, built another company, sold it, invested in a few, got tired of paying lawyers, met my co-founder, Laurent, genius, ex-VC and serial angel investor. And he was saying, those lawyers, they charge a fortune, they make mistakes, they take forever, we should change that. So we got together, it's like almost 10 years ago now, to create SeedLegals so that nobody has to go to lawyers. SeedLegals is now a 160-person company, about 50,000 startups on our platform. I think the majority of all early stage UK startups are on SeedLegals, for fundraising, building the company, stock options, team, and more. And of course, with a nice market share in the UK, what do we do to expand? Well, the US. And so I now spend a fair amount of time in New York, mostly hanging out at startup events, building SeedLegals' US offering, which is taking off very nicely. So that's the last quite a few years for me in a few minutes. Hope that was fun.
No, that's amazing. Thank you very much for the introduction, Anthony. I know most of our community knows us, but this is going to be hosting our channel, so it's going to be spreading the word out there. And today you have a lot of very good takes and insights for early stage founders, right? When you are starting.
Yeah, one of the joys at SeedLegals is I talk literally to thousands of founders. I do many, many events, and I don't know if there's any other company where people reach out to the CEO directly for often founder to founder advice. And I'm always delighted to be there when things go right and when things go wrong. And things go wrong is usually a founder fallout. And then I'm always there to give advice. But what I like to do is try, how can I be awesome and give advice in a scalable way? So I figured the third time someone asks me a question, I'll make a video on it. And so, and of course, one day AI will put me out of a job. But until then, we're good. So
I don't think so. We might be a few years, maybe several months from that, I guess. The developers will lose the jobs first, right? Well, before we start in the actual content of the interview, I just wanted you to do a highlight on your founder journey for SeedLegals, because you have a story there on how you met your co-founder, how the idea started, how you saw the pain, how you structured SeedLegals as a unquestionable, very successful company right now. But 10 years ago when it started, it was just an idea similar to what most of the people have, right? So tell me a bit of this story.
It's a great point. So I think one of the really interesting, thoughts that's generic for everyone is, if you are, bored of your day job, or you've sold your last business and you want to do a startup, then, how do you find the right idea? So one way is scientifically, you do a Venn diagram analysis of, your university education, the things you love, a market analysis, the latest trends. You put it all together and you think, I've got a degree in this and I'm good at this and the market's that and the opportunities there, and you put it all, and then you go, great, we'll select, like an MBA would. This, I'm not sure, is a good idea. The other way of doing it is you kind of have random ideas, and then, most of them you should just kill immediately in the bath or shower or while you're going for a run. But some of them, start gnawing at you. And then, there are all these ideas. And now you're kind of kicking yourself, because if you don't do them, life will go by and one day someone else will do them. And maybe that's okay. Or maybe you'll be super annoyed. So at some point it's like, okay, I now need to do it. But I think that what realistically happens is, even though you think you should be planning these things scientifically, life is just a series of opportunistic events, which means the more you network and the more you get out and talk to people, the more opportunity there is. And in this particular case, an investor in my previous startup was having a fabulous 50th birthday party in Rome. And he invited about 200 people, some from the UK, and I went with my wife, and we were sipping, a very nice red wine on the steps of the restaurant overlooking the Forum. And there was this guy, Laurent, and we were talking, and he was explaining that this is what he was wanting to do, but he was looking for a tech person to, create it. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I'm looking for the next thing to do. So it was completely, fortuitous, because, people say, are you a lawyer? And initially I was really embarrassed to say, I'm not a lawyer. How can I run a legal tech company and not be a lawyer? But now I'm actually proud not to be a lawyer. Not that there's anything wrong with lawyers, but it needs, I think, an outsider to bring a fresh look at the space. I mean, if Elon Musk came from General Motors, Teslas would have a petrol engine with a small bolt-on electric motor. So being able to see, lawyers, their output is a pile of legal documents. But what founders really want is, how do I find investors? Should I agree to this term? If I agree, am I the only schmuck agreeing, or am I crazy not to agree? Is my pitch deck good? And by the way, sure, I need a safe and a priced round and, other things, but they're looking for, market, commercial, getting investment ready advice. And so at SeedLegals, I like to joke, what would a law firm do? We'll do completely the opposite. So we use data to show you, what deal terms to choose and what makes sense. There's no, by the clock, $500 an hour. No, there's unlimited help and support. Anyway, I'm not here to plug SeedLegals, but I talk to a lot of founders, and I'm here to share thoughts of what I found work and what not, so that you get there faster.
No, for sure. I just wanted to add that now most of the founders in our community can go to parties, and instead of saying that they are just slacking off, they can say that they are working. No, I'm going to find my next co-founder here, right? Because you did find your co-founder in a party. So why
exactly? And the developers who are unemployed, they don't need to put unemployed. They just put they're in stealth mode on their LinkedIn bio. And so everyone who's in stealth mode could be between jobs, or maybe they're doing a new startup. You never know. So
yeah, imagine wear a camouflage. I'm on stealth, but I hold a banner or a flag, say, I'm on stealth, okay? Don't look at me.
Actually, putting stealth mode in your LinkedIn profile is a good way to get investor interest. So there's at least one company, which is poach.vc, that I subscribe to their newsletter, and you get a newsletter every day companies that are fundraising or think you're before they even know they're fundraising. And one of the cues it uses is that you've set your profile to stealth, and then it goes and checks your background and your last job, and uses some software to make some prediction that you might be. And I occasionally write to these companies when they look interesting, and the founder sometimes goes, "How did you know? I wasn't even ready to open my round." So it's quite a good signal.
Well, that's great. Great to know. The signals are there right now. Most of the top funnel strategies from VCs are also AI powered, so it's about getting the right keywords there, and it works well, right? But dive into the material of the interview. It's not about plugging Seed Legal. It's just that Seed Legals is kind of the matter of what we're speaking. We're helping founders to structure, to prepare for fundraising and scale, right? So let's get to it. Number one, number two, number three. What are the basics for people that have ideas? Maybe they have the first clients. They can go to market. What they should do. Step one after hiring Seed Legal's plan. Next step.
Okay, so the biggest problem by far that I see is, when I see, customers or founders, they're usually about ready to start their funding round. So they've created a website and now and a pitch deck. And when I talk to a founder personally, they tell me excitedly what they're working on. So let's say they tell me that, it's crazy. I was paying crazy amounts for my home insurance. And so I built like an AI system to check other home insurance. And now I'm saving 50% on my home insurance. So I'm building a startup to do that. And it sounds great. And then I say, well, send me the pitch deck or the website. And then you look at the website and it says, we leverage blockchain and agentic AI to revolutionize insurance. And you've fallen asleep before the bottom of the page. And it makes no sense to anyone. So the biggest problem is that founders on their websites and pitch decks say what they do rather than why anyone wants it. And I think it's a combination of essentially many founders are tech founders. They love building stuff. So they're essentially showing how clever they are at what they're building, but nobody cares. It's what the problem it solves. And I realized this many years ago with SeedLegals, where our first version of our website said, we use document automation to, automate legal documents or something. And then one day I woke up and go, there are 0 people in the world that get up in the morning and go, what I want is document automation. No, they want the fastest way to close their round, or they found an investor and what should I do next? And so then, I changed it to, the fastest way to close your next round. And it's, morphed from there. So the key thing is that your website and your pitch deck, they're different audiences. Your website is for, your customers, and pitch deck is for investors. But I think if investors see that a customer would love it and they get it as a customer, then they think it will take off and then they want to be part of it. So your website needs to explain something is broken, it's insane, here's how we're fixing it, not in those words. And so when I see the website, for example, that says, we use leverage blockchain and AI to revolutionize insurance, I would talk to the founder and go, tell me, what do you actually do? And they would say, it's crazy, people spending too much for their home insurance. Okay, great. And then we'll remake the website to say, you're paying 50% too much for your home insurance. In the next 5 minutes, you can save, $1,000 a month on whatever it might be on your home insurance. And a giant get started button, or maybe talk to an expert and so on as well. And then you show some customer testimonials. Then you show how it works, 3 use cases, and you have rich lifestyle graphics. So I would explain this to people, but now I can go a step further thanks to Lovable and other vibe coding platforms. And so my favorite thing is when I'm talking to somebody, I might vibe code a new version of their website. And I'll use a prompt like this: make a better version of the website at xyz.com. Explain how XYZ solves the problem of, let's say, home insurance being too expensive. Explain that people pay 50% too much for their home insurance. In the next 5 minutes, using AI, we will connect you with 3 brokers that are fine just for you, that we use, we've done a back-end auction to guarantee or give you the lowest price. And then we say, include customer testimonials showing how fabulous we are, include a competitor analysis. And this is where vibe coding platforms are amazing, because unlike Figma, they can search the web and find competitors and build a competitor matrix. Then I say, include a pricing table, which might surprise you, but it can come up with innovative pricing. And then I say, make a rich, modern website with lifestyle graphics showing people using the app. And then, wow, what a difference. The website which you looked at and you couldn't figure out what they were doing, suddenly has got a picture of Alice, sitting on a beanbag in the lounge going, oh my God, this is not good. A picture of your app on their phone or iPad, and you're paying too much for your home insurance. And suddenly you resonate with that. So I'm going on a bit about this because basically, with rare exception, early stage founders have really terrible websites, and they can do with a serious redo. And one example I loved recently was a company, obviously I'm not going to say what it was, but it made software to help large companies operate more efficiently. And I was on a call with the founder, and he was saying they had interest from a VC, and their lead contact at a VC rather liked them. But then they called back and said they were unable to explain to the other people in the VC what this company did, and they were stuck. And so I said, well, let me see your website. And I said, well, actually, I can't figure out what you do either. So tell me what you do. And then I vibe coded a new website for them, and they loved it so much. They basically took the vibe coded website and made it their website. And I need to catch up with them to see how their fundraising is going. But I mean, at least it now makes sense and actually looks really compelling.
That's interesting. Interesting thing, because most people are using vibe code right now to create features.
Right.
But features without clients, I don't know anyone that got rich by just adding features to a product that no one was buying, right? So what we're saying that instead of adding the features, we could use vibe coding first to research and explain our idea and go to market.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it, because once upon a time, if you had an idea, you'd have to wave your arms and ask people if it was a good idea. And then, of course, they would say it's a good idea because you in front of them and going, is it an awesome idea? And then they kind of lie, and then you go build it and spend months or years of your life and raise millions. And then actually it turns out really no one wanted it. So what you really want is you want to build something that looks like the real thing and then test it with people. And if people can't understand it, the good news is, you can make another version in 10 minutes. So this has changed everything for fundraising. So that's another thing that's really important to note, which is when you talk to investors, they're often thinking about the moat, right? So the moat is, what do you have that's unique? And there used to be sort of 4 moats, which is the founders are unique, the idea or product, the distribution, and the intellectual property. And now the founders are still somewhat, if you're great founders, that's it. The distribution is really important. The IP is dwindled to very little, and the ability to build it is dwindled to almost nothing, because 20 years ago, you had to raise $1 million just to buy Cisco servers so that you could, actually host it. And then AWS came along, and for a few $100s a month, you got the hosting, but you still had to spend hundreds of thousands on developers. And now, at least, for the mock-ups and the prototypes, that's gone to kind of zero. So everyone can make a mock-up of anything in minutes. So investors expect, when you tell them I'm raising $1 million to develop it, you used to be proud of that, and you could develop it because someone else didn't have the $1 million. Now the investor's going, dude, why aren't you just, vibe coding it or using AI coding tools, you shouldn't need more than $50,000. And so if you are still looking for large amounts of money to build a prototype, you're going to struggle to find investment.
I see. So two things. The ideation, people lie to you, of course, is a good idea. Let's make a dating app for pets. People will love that. And then you spend years and no one wants to buy that, right? Or at least they want to purchase. So the PMF that there can be validated early. And second, if I got it correctly, the vibe coding component is almost a must now. If you raise 50K, 100K to build a product, you are behind of your competition. They are doing that with vibe coding and validating the pain way before you're doing, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
That's interesting. Also, another idea that crossed in my mind. Have you thought on making an agent with these kind of questions that you did for rewriting the website? Because this could become a agent itself, like Anthony Vibes. .com, and then you go there, put your website, explain your product, and then in 5 minutes it creates a better version of your website.
That is, well, when I joked earlier about putting myself out of business with AI, I mean, that's sort of really what I meant. I can lie on the beach while my agents do all sorts of things. And in fact, one of the nice things at SeedLegals, because so many startups are on SeedLegals, I see everything. And one of my customers made an AI Anthony for me. So they wrote to me saying, they're doing a voice synthesis system, and they build sort of AI agents. So they said, hey, Anthony, we've cloned your voice, and then we've ingested the hundreds of articles that you've written from the SeedLegal site to build an AI Anthony. And I tried it out. It was unbelievably good. I mean, the voice was exactly me, even the intonation, and the things it was talking about came from my articles. So it was quite surreal, but it's a fun story. So they said, are you okay with it? I went, yeah, that's great. In fact, I'm not only okay, but I will help promote what you've done. And so we'll post it on LinkedIn. And so you just go to a web page and you just talk at your browser, and it does the voice to text, and then virtual Anthony replies. And you can ask it, all the questions that people ask me about fundraising advice. And since I wrote lots of articles, it does pretty good answers. But then I got a glimpse of the dystopian future, because a few people started writing to me saying, hey, Anthony, I love virtual Anthony, but I'm not sure of its answers. And I asked it a question and I wasn't confident. So can I ask you the answer? And now I began to feel embarrassed that my virtual me was not that good, even though I never made it and I'm not responsible for it. I still felt guilty that somehow people were perceiving it like me, and not surprisingly. So anyway, I sent it to my mother, who's quite elderly, to try out. And she replied, it's really, really good, but it can't tell me when you're coming to visit me next, which I thought was quite fun. So, yes.
Yeah, see, I remember we did that event with the virtual twins with the investors, right? So the video generation is the tricky part, but eventually, if we have the video and the voice and the knowledge, it's over. I could interview the virtual Anthony 24/7, and you wouldn't even need to leave your bed, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, this is the future, and then the question is it a future that we want or not? So, you see your Twitter feed, now an increasing number of people talking about AI, SDRs and outreach, AI content generation. There was a post earlier today I saw, which was somebody proudly saying that, if you're still spending thousands a month on content generation, you're dead, because they can have 100 agents building content. And I was thinking, what a load of nonsense. It's AI slop. It's awful. I didn't want to, bag this person, but it's exactly the thing that will destroy your company if you fill your feed with AI rubbish.
Yeah.
So, it's in fact now important that you build up an authentic tone of voice. So there will never be a clone. No, there will be a clone of me, but
Yeah. At least not with the current AIs. And the people in the audience, I have Daniel and Augusto here participating. They are following the conversation closely. Augusto is asking if we are talking to the real Anthony or the virtual Anthony right now. So discover maybe in person.
You're talking to the real one, but I have to say, it's been said that, just in case you're ever taken hostage and, or somebody calls your spouse and pretends to be you, you need to have like a code word with your partner so that you can really verify that it's the real person. But, because otherwise it might be really difficult.
Yeah, yeah.
There has to be some knowledge that's not on the internet anywhere. I mean, I'd be surprised if between partners there isn't such knowledge, but you probably want to agree on something, and then you can tell that it's genuine because the AI would never have been able to find that information.
Yeah, some secret passwords. It's becoming crazy. Most people don't realize that, but it is possible to create very good deep fakes.
Yeah.
But Augusto, this is the real Anthony. Okay, as far as I know, so you're not being fooled. Don't worry. Uh, it, it, it appeared to me, Anthony, that you had special powers in SF when I was randomly talking about the VC event and you pop it up behind me that day. Don't know if you remember, but I trust that this is because of your very acute sense of being in the right place in the right time, and not because you are a virtual agent. I trust you on that. Okay. That's great. And Daniel is also asking if it's matter. Does it matter if you are speaking with a virtual agent, a digital twin of a person, or the real person? If the answer is the same at some point, it's a very philosophical.
Yeah, and by the way, that's a great point. And at the moment, we think that the AI one is firstly not as good. It's doesn't have all the knowledge and it will hallucinate, but people talk a lot of crap themselves. So the fact that people make up nonsense, I mean, if you're on Twitter, you'll know most of it is nonsense. So the humans hallucinate. So I don't see that as a problem. But I think the issue is that people, if you are spending your time personally talking to somebody, you think it's disrespectful if it's an AI. And I think at this point, I have to talk about your AI outreach, which is
get it up. Let's put it up.
Okay, so here goes, which is I got an email from Matthias saying, would you like to be on my podcast? And, I know Matthias, we meet up many times. I would love to be on his podcast, but there was something about the email that sounded like it was a slight mass email. So I replied saying, I would be delighted to be on the podcast. But by the way, did you email just me or was this a mass email? And then he replied saying, no, I emailed just you. And I went, okay, great. And then 2 days later, there was an email from Matthias going, I'm so sorry, my AI agent lied when it said that it was just you. In fact, it has been emailing lots of people. But then I was sure it was the real Matthias, but I was amazed that the agent lied. And then the agent made a mistake on the time. It didn't know that Wednesday was the 20th, or the 18th, not the 20th. Exactly. Anyway, so your agent still needs a little bit of fine tuning.
That's the thing. Well, Daniel even pointed out you can't fool your real customer with slub. So at some point, these automations, they all fail. Social media automation, reply automation, scheduling automations. I didn't even know you were in that list, but eventually the agent bypassed all of the prompt engineering instructions I had and just straight out lied. Oh, I'm the real Matheus. I wonder how many times he did that behind my back. So I'm going to get those bunch of bytes and push them.
I mean, we're obviously talking about a super important topic in the near future of humanity, which is, obviously I'm delighted to go to ChatGPT and ask it things. And of course, I know it's AI. And I'd be delighted to go to an airline booking system and talk to an AI agent. They're probably going to be much faster and much better than a human agent. But where you get annoyed is where your time is valuable and you're only spending your time because you think the person at the other end of the line, their time is valuable as well. So if, now you get inbound emails or unsolicited incoming emails saying, hey, I'm the AI agent for somebody, can I book a meeting? And you go, well, you're thinking, fuck off. But you just hit delete because it really is somebody else devaluing your time. And so I think there's this sort of social norm that both parties need to put in equal amounts of time. I'm happy that I get, an agent wanting to schedule a call with me when I've got an agent that's going to take that and our agents can agree. But if I'm wasting my time talking to an agent, I mean, what do you even reply to an agent? Sorry if I took your time in the email. Do you reply, it's okay? But no, it makes no sense. I don't know why people do this, because it's so obviously stupid.
Exactly. When it's applying the correct niche, let's say top funnel and all, okay, but when it's like relationship building, it can be dangerous. I see, even without AI, I see people, for example, scheduling calls when they're in the same city. They could go for a coffee, have a very important one-on-one meeting, but they prefer online, and then they prefer virtual, and then now they prefer AI, and eventually we are only going to be small dots in the history, and all the eyes are going to do the economy by themselves. This is not a good, a bright outlook in the future, right? I don't know if you agree, Anthony. Seems like kind of dark, right?
Well, there are lots of chores in life that machines do, the dishwashing and the ironing and the robot floor cleaning, and these are all great. So, you don't want to be on hold to the airline, fixing things or whatever. So all of these, exactly should be agents. I think where it gets tricky is, as I said, where somebody else is misusing your time or devaluing your time, looking to get business from you potentially, with an agent. And I think that's where the reaction will be, until there are agents on both sides. But I in theory, I think it's fine. But everything, I need to feel that my time is valued in any relationship, and if it's not, then I've got other things I can do with it, right?
Yeah, that's so true. Speaking of a background as well, you came from like music and art. Before that, you understand this very important piece that a lot of founders they miss, that human connections are way more important than just the transaction value of business, right? But that's a whole different talk.
And that, by the way, is one of the beauties of being in New York, because New York's got the most fantastic in-person event scene. And what in-person events, and by the way, I'm mentioning this because it really is important for founders to go out and network, because you can be at home, you can do everything digitally. When we're expanding SeedLegals to the US, I was thinking, I can just do Zoom calls. Why should I get on the plane and be in New York and be away from home and so on? But it's actually invaluable, because when you're on a Zoom call, there's no serendipity, there's no meeting other people. But when you go to an event, there's all this extra stuff that happens. So, we met at an event, right? And we met because someone connected us, and that was a random thing. So none of this call or others would have happened had I not gotten my butt on a plane and been at an event in New York. I'd probably gone out on a cold, rainy night to an event. And so you really need to do that. And it's also really important as a founder to learn the art and craft of being a founder, is to benchmark yourself against other people and see how other people are presenting, whether they present well or not. Are they dialing it up to 11 in the bullshit meter on their thing, or the confidence meter, or are they super modest? These are all things that are important, because if you are very shy, but everyone else out there is dialing it up to 11, you're never going to get investment, or you're going to find it much harder to compete. You need to get out of your skin or your comfort zone. And it's a bit of theater being on stage, presenting and pitching. And these are all learned things, because many founders, myself included, started out as, INTJ or INTP, if you know your Myers-Briggs. The I is introvert, but that has to get reinvented, because you need to get people to follow you or invest in you, or trust that your platform will be able to meet their needs in the days when it's by no means ready to do so. So that comes from getting on stage and being with other founders.
That's super interesting. It kind of comes back to initial point of founders sometimes building too much features, locking in, but forgetting that there's a world out there. And I would like to make a hook there, because before moving forward on the subject, Daniel asked exactly about that. So probably it's a good time to hear your impressions, Anthony, of why so many founders leave in tech instead of the problems and building their websites and building their products, like add AI to set up title to get 10x valuation.
Okay. All right.
What do
So I
you
think
think?
that so there are two parts to the question. One of them is, why do they lead with features? And the other one is, does adding AI give a 10x? So let's talk about leading with features. So I think, many founders are tech founders, and leading with features is kind of a lazy thing to do. It's in your comfort zone. You love, listening to music and coding, and would probably prefer not to talk to another human being. So if you think that the thing you need to do is add more features, then you're in your comfort zone. But if you realize that people are not buying it, not because it doesn't have another feature, but because they can't understand the wording on your website, or maybe the wording on your website's great, but no one comes across your website, you have to work on letting the world know about it. And this is a new skill set for you. Do you go to, what is your go-to-market strategy? And, for a tech founder, comfort zone is building stuff. Non-comfort zone is pitching, selling, working out, but telling people they have to pay for it. These all seem like either boring or slightly embarrassing activities, but you need to get on calls with customers and see if you can sell them what you've got. And until you do that, you think that the reason no one is buying or coming to your site is, if only I had these extra features. Or maybe you talk to a few customers and they ask for some features, and you go build these features, but then you're forever building features. And one thing I learned, and in fact it's key to this entire SeedLegals model, is if you can persuade people to change their desire based on what you've got, that is very powerful. And I think it's subconsciously things that pretty much everyone does. So the way that you open a screw top bottle or a beer can or something, or if you buy a two-door car, you don't try and get in the back. You just go, there are two doors. I'll open this door and move the seat. So if you give people, if you ask people what they want, they're going to tell you 50 different things. If you give them one super easy to use thing and make it awesome, what will happen is people will change what they want to match what you give them. And that is the path to success. Now, it won't be for everyone. But that's fine. Don't chase 100% of the market. If you could get 80% of the market, that's great. And so the SeedLegals example, which was key to SeedLegals, is when you go to a lawyer, lawyers like making red line changes to documents, and the cost of changing one word is the same as any other word. So lawyers send these documents to each other at $500 to $1,000 an hour that you're paying for, while they futz around and change wording from all reasonable efforts to best practical efforts or nonsense like that. And the problem is, changing one word is as costly or cheap as changing any other word. What we do at SeedLegals is we take you through the main deal terms that we've identified over thousands of rounds. These are the things people want to negotiate. So we make these really easy to change, and then we make all the other legal boilerplate wording quite difficult to change. So that was the big gamble. And so when we started SeedLegals, it was a bit unusual, and people would go, what if I want to edit this word? And I go, well, intentionally, it's not a tech bug. It's not a lack of feature. We don't want you to edit those. We want you to choose what's the valuation, what's the cap, what's the discount, how many directors do you want, and the other stuff the platform will build. And it was a bet, and it turned out to be a really good bet, because it turns out that nobody wants to futz around with this other wording other than lawyers. And investors would just prefer to have standardized docs. Founders don't know this stuff anyway and want to spend their time building, not paying lawyers. And so if you can create something that doesn't have to meet people's needs if you ask them their needs, but fills some need really efficiently and hopefully cheaply, then people change what they want. And a perfect example of that is the YC Safe. The YC Safe is a really weird document, right? Because investors don't get stock, and there are only 3 things you can select in it: the cap, the discount, and the amount that is invested. And founders, the dilution stacks up in bad ways against them. But everyone uses it because it's just easier than others. And that's a great example of people. Nobody should be using this document, but because it's easy to use and free, essentially, people have redefined success and use it. So if you can figure out what that is in your space that meets the needs of maybe 80%, even 50%, maybe even 20% initially of people, and then I think you've got the winner as more and more people decide, oh, what I wanted before was just wrong. Wanting to change every word was a stupid idea. What I really wanted is the investor's money as rapidly as possible, because the risk for the investor isn't that these words, which no one of us understands, will sink their money, but it's that my drones won't fly, or my pizza tastes terrible, or no one wants my SaaS product. So that's where the risk lies. The rest should be easy. Anyway, end mini rant from me on that.
I imagine how many lawyers disagree with that, but the founders and investors are happy.
Well, the tragedy is lawyers might agree, but their $500 to $1,000 billing may like that method. So, but that's the challenge lawyers are going to face in the age of AI, where if AI can do the document review and tell you what's market standard or not, and it says instead of taking 5 hours, it's now going to be 1 hour. What does the lawyer do? Does it jack up its rates to $10,000 an hour, or does it just go, I'm going to make less money? So
I see. No, that's great. If I got it correctly, when I'm pitching my product to someone and they ask more features, before urging to develop these features, and way too many features to manage and explain, I could just adapt the storytelling somehow and then propose that instead of a bug as a feature, and that might be the focus, the killing edge for your proposal, your company, like you said with SeedLegals, right?
Right. So let me give you another example, actually, that's from my BBC days. So on a project that was a disaster for the BBC. So the BBC, some years ago, the things, video was still filmed on tape, and they want to now make everything digital. And so they created this project called DMI, the Digital Media Initiative, and they sent consultants around the BBC to ask everyone their requirements. And everyone figured, well, I need to give you my requirements, because if I don't, you're going to build something and I've never given the requirement and I'll never be able to give it again. So everyone came up with this huge laundry list of requirements, and they had hundreds of pages of requirements. So the cost of this ballooned to like $100 million or something insane, so big that eventually it never shipped fully, and it was a huge waste of money. But I was running iPlayer at the time, and I needed a digital ingest and file management system. And so I saw this, giant elephant being specced out, and people, but I needed to, I could see it was going to take like forever to build and probably would never ship. But every time I said I was building something, people, no, you can't build it because there's like the official one. So eventually I went, stuff it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go guerrilla, and I'm going to ask 3 people or a few people, what their needs were. And then I was going to pick what I was going to build. And then based on what I thought was a sort of common denominator, and I would build it. And then I would go around the company and say, I've built this. You can use it if it meets your needs, you can use it. And I ended up building it for like $1 million. And it was viral within the company because it didn't meet half the needs what they wanted, but it turned out they never really needed those needs. They just said, okay, great, we'll use it in this mode, and I'll sit over here, and the files, I'll make shorter files or whatever it might be. And it was a great way of doing it, which is you build something, you make it cheap, and then people change what they want because they can use it.
Oh, that's brilliant. Simplicity, the The
Yeah.
beauty of engineering is simplicity, right?
Yeah, and by the way, I think we do this subconsciously, with everything in life. If you look around your house, or when you buy clothing, you could go to Carnaby Street in London and pay a fortune for a tailor to measure you. You don't. You go and buy, a t-shirt, small, medium, large, and it might be a little tight or a little loose, whatever. It's much better than the alternative.
No, that's great. That's great. And let me do another hook on the subject that we were speaking before. Imagine this world of agents speaking to agents. So if I'm using agent on you, I might not be valuing your time, but eventually the agents by themselves would handle everything with no human in the loop. So Vic is asking, but it has nothing to do with startups necessarily, but it's an interesting opinion. What is your opinion on the future of the job market if the AI would replace most of the job functions, as people are saying they would?
Well, obviously, this is the giant question for humanity that I'm no better placed than anyone else to answer. Um, I would say, oh, something fell, don't know what it is. But I don't know. But well, on the one hand, I'm skeptical because, technology has changed over the years. The Industrial Revolution came, and people are still as employed as before, and life is much better as a result. I'm unsure about how a society can function at all if most people are unemployed, because people won't have money to buy things, and it will have to change. So I'm a rampant technologist. I think technology can screw up everything, but it can fix everything. So I'm a very bullish about the future. But I think people have to reinvent what they do to leverage technology. And I think this goes, for example, imagine in the days when the weaving machines were created. Well, people were weaving, 20 hours a day. It was a dismal life. And then the machine came along, and the smart ones reinvented themselves to be the designers of the cloth that would get weaved, and the machine would weave it. So what we want to do is, we want to be embracing the technology. The question is, will there be many people who are unable to do that, and what happens to them? Obviously, I don't know the answer better than anyone else, but I am a huge optimist for the future and think technology, many people's lives, by the way, I think maybe this is key. Many people's lives are not that pleasant. People live in much of the world in squalid conditions. So anything that suggests as a starting point that we should perpetuate what we've got now and afraid of technology changing what we've got now, I don't think is a great basis. I think the idea is technology improves it, and just saying that it has to keep it the same is ignoring the fact that for many people, life is not brilliant, and making the opportunity to improve it is what we should be aiming for.
Interesting. Yeah, because this is one of my usual questions I have, or concerns that I have from early founders. Maybe I can expand on Cass' question there on what would be the problems worth solving, because it might be solving a pain that's not going to happen in the future if humans are not working with that anymore. Let me automate Excel sheets. Oh, wait, are people going to still use Excel sheets from 10 years from now? So what kind of ideas do you think that are more resilient, and what kind of ideas might be replaced in a few months or years?
Well, I would love to be super smart and have the answer for that beyond anyone else. I mean, what is exhilarating or scary is the pace of technology, right? I mean, how much we've changed the way we work with AI, even month by month. And so if we extrapolate, it's going to be quite difficult to think, that far ahead. On the one hand, everything has changed, right? The fact that I can build a website. I use Whisper Flow, which is voice to text. So I've dictated 1.5 million words over the last 6 months. It's probably saved me literally 3 weeks of my life typing. It's amazing. I barely use the keyboard other than, to correct it. So I can now talk and build a website in 10 minutes, which would have cost me, $30,000 or so beforehand. It's unbelievable. On the flip side, I still cook dinner with my wife and we live in an apartment and, go for a walk. So some things are unchanged and some things are very different. So it will be quite interesting. I'm very much looking forward to agents doing things for me. I guess at the moment I'm slightly a victim more of other people's outbound messaging filling my mailbox than my agents are not quite catching up with it yet. And I've noticed, for example, on LinkedIn that, and I know this is sort of trivial, but my most recent posts are now increasing. The comments are filled with things that are obviously, the person posting is saying, yeah, that looks awesome, I agree, and the person's a marketer. And so I'm the guy who heads product at X was saying that he feared firstly the woke left taking over Twitter, then he feared the hard right taking over Twitter, and now he fears the AI bots taking over Twitter is the biggest problem, and it's the hard problem to solve. So fake content, too much content, these are interesting problems. It will be interesting to see how we react, but I don't think that I think all things in the past we found a solution. Shortly after finding the problem.
But it's good that you call this out because I see a lot of founders attracted by the promises of automating everything with AI as a SaaS, and be it like sales automations and scaling automations, LinkedIn posting automation, reply bots like these. Oh yeah, this is awesome, and then you see that 1,000 times because for a short period of time this can create a lot of value, but eventually this is going to saturate the market, and then no one is going to read comments anymore. Good. Now the value returned to zero. You cannot extract anything anymore, and you made the world worse for everyone else. So there is not much value to be created there, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. But of course, the wonderful thing of entrepreneurs is there thousands, millions of them all think of solutions to this problem. So, maybe there'll be videos that are created, and maybe the videos will have some blockchain stamp to show the video was made by a human. And then, of course, people will hack it, so the agents will add the same blockchain stamp, and there'll be an arms race. But if you like technology and you can be a founder and build stuff yourself, you might actually quite like these problems as intellectual challenges and maybe business opportunities.
Yeah, maybe the problems of your startup are not even real problems anymore. Those problems are going to start happening a few months from now.
Well, I
That's
think the
interesting.
interesting one for many startups is, the word on the street that SaaS companies are dead. I think this is a lot of bullshit, actually, because it's often the workflow. So, for example, there was some founder group, someone was saying, what do you use for cap table software? And of course, it could be SeedLegals, it could be Carter, it could be others, the ones in the market. But this person said, well, we don't pay anyone, just build it with, Claude Code or something. And on the one hand, it's interesting. On the other hand, it's stupid for two reasons. Firstly, if a founder is spending their precious time building a replacement for something as inexpensive and commodity as cap table, they're really misusing their time. They need to spend their time building their own product, not building things that they could acquire. And secondly, it shows a complete misunderstanding of all the nuances of what's needed in cap table software, at least for more complicated cap tables. But it's this mindset that I now see filling startup groups where when people ask, should I use HubSpot? Oh, no, I'm just like, vibe coding my own HubSpot. And now everyone who's watching this is thinking, is this complete bullshit? Or am I wrong for paying HubSpot? But I think it's nonsense because you can probably code something primitive yourself. The folks at HubSpot should be using AI to reduce their development time and effort, but there's so many pieces to these things that you gloss over. And anyway, if you're building your own HubSpot, you're not building your own product that's unique. You're wasting your time and your investors' money by building something that you should be buying, not building.
Yeah, this whole discussion, I guess people are calling it software or something like a software that you find code for yourself. And that's so interesting parallel. There are things that you do for yourself. For example, there are people that plant food at home and grow at home and eat. That's good. Doesn't take too much time. But if you try to do that with medicine, like try and cure your own disease with plants that you grow at home, that can go completely bad soon. So there are things that you might want to do yourself. It's a small workflow automation, send emails and all. But if you're replacing like a cap table software that is so commodity, so cheap, that can cause so much problem, I guess this is not something that you want to spend your time on it, right?
Yeah, and also, of course, particularly with cap table, 5 years later, when your investor said, "Can you prove to me that my 12,387 shares are correct?" What cap table software you're using? You go, "I vibe coded it myself," is not going to be a very good answer, and somebody's going to ask for some immutable chain to show, hopefully on a piece of paper, for 10 years before what the number was, because no one's going to trust it, and that's the other problem with it. So yeah.
And then eventually the AI wipes the whole database, and then you are lost. Well, no one
That's
has
right.
shares anymore. We are a non-profit from now on.
That's right. You decide to cancel your subscription with that particular thing, and you move from Claude Code to the next one, and suddenly it's like, "Oh, I forgot my cap table's disappeared."
That's so funny. Yeah, people pay attention on that. Software is good, but you need to use it with caution, right?
I can't find my cap table project anymore. Did anyone rename it?
We don't have any shares anymore. We have a great question around that from Daniel. Like, if everything gets replaced, like legal work, like SeedLegals has all of this automation or doing software, like vibe coding, replacing software engineers, do you think that salaries would fall, or the higher demand push would come as a perceived value and sustain it above zero, something like that? Kind of a market positioning question here.
Right. So clearly another one where I don't know the answer better than anyone else. But I think one of the interesting things that I can tell as a personal story is that when change happens, it's often not the incumbents, the existing players, but it's the new players that are changing everything, and the existing players resist it. So back in the days of Kazaa, there were, the way you got your music is you went to a record store and you bought a vinyl record or a CD, and CD sales were like $10 billion a year. And you'd have to go to a record store and you could browse through it. And a record store would have about 4,000 titles in it, which seemed to be about the right number to satisfy most people. And then the hits played on the radio. And there's a whole formula. And then the internet came along. And people like the folks at Kazaa, I personally went to see all the major music, well, the major music labels in New York to show internet streaming. And instead of embracing it, they sued the companies that were driving this change, because they reckoned it was better to spend $100 million on legal fees to try and prevent change than to embrace change. And I thought it was ridiculous, because CD sales were falling. It was obvious the internet was the future, but for a certain group, it made potentially economic sense to try and protect the past by suing people doing new things rather than trying to embrace it themselves. And it took like 20 years until Spotify was able to finally crack through. And now, of course, labels are making all of their money either through concerts or digital. Hardly any CDs are sold or records, other than for a few diehard aficionados. So it was the incumbents who wanted to prevent change. And I saw that then with the broadcasters, where I went to speak to RTL, the German TV broadcaster, and they were saying that they didn't want Google to index their TV shows because it made Google more powerful. It's like, dude, are you insane? Google is already quite large. And if they don't index your TV shows, there's only one thing that happens. Nobody knows your shows will be on and no one's going to watch it. It's the most stupid thing ever. But you can see how people who, think that they rule the world want to protect their existing industry. And, the same with lawyers. If you happen to have a multi-billion-dollar law practice based on charging, $1,000 an hour or something, and now AI can do in 100 milliseconds what the lawyer's been doing in an hour, well, how do you deal with that? Do you keep the billing per hour model? Do you try to keep the human, but the human uses AI? But law firms are never going to, in the same way broadcasters didn't reinvent themselves and record companies didn't reinvent themselves, it took others to do it. With law firms, I don't think they're going to reinvent themselves. It's going to be new players that deliver AI or other workflow or agentic solutions that solve particular vertical problems dramatically more efficiently and take the cost of those to zero. And law firms will end up being sort of the skeleton that is doing the things that the other vertical services are not doing, things like litigation and, complex M&A deals. But, the legals for buying an apartment, AI solution, obviously, fundraising, workflow AI solution. So AI is going to slice these verticals in the same way that SeedLegals picked a fundraising vertical and said, all funding rounds are highly standardized on standardized documents. Computer can make these and humans can agree with each other what they want. You'll find, I think, that being replicated. And the same will happen with other industries where people will start finding slices of the market, which initially are probably, smaller, simpler, narrow, but then that will just eat away everything else.
Interesting.
You've got a good soundbite from that right there. I didn't intend it that way, but there was a mini post there on its own.
Oh, for sure. By the way, being mindful with your time, Anthony. I know that we passed 1 hour here, and it happened that in today's interview we kind of cover most on the positioning, like how the marks are going, how you should handle your features and all. But we might have like 9 other topics to speak about. So maybe I should book some time with a virtual agent and start interviewing like Anthony's AI crash course and all that you need for building your startup. That could be a good series.
We'll have to agree a code word that if I reply and the agent doesn't know, I know it's not you. So
well, would be concerned if someday the agent start replying better than you, and then that shit hit the fan there. Oh, red button, stop. But that's great, Andy. Thank you very much for coming. Do you want to close with any last words on SeedLegals, how to reach out to you? I know you answer people in the chat all the time. We're very accessible. So anything, any directions that you would like to point for people watching today's interview?
Yeah, well, I would say, if you're an early stage founder, you're looking to get investment ready, you want to fundraise, go check out SeedLegals. It's available in the US, UK, France, Ireland. And the goal is it's the all-in-one place to help you with both, of course, safes, cap table, funding rounds, and so on, but also all the advice, knowledge, and so on, both from articles, videos, and actual humans. We do use AI internally for reviewing documents, checking things are correct, reconciling against state registries and things like that. But our customers love talking to our wonderful human team, and you'll have real humans chatting together with the platform. And our model is actually people plus platform. So you can also incorporate your company on SeedLegals. You can do an LLC to C Corp conversion, and of course you can fundraise. You can create a pitch page. And there's a lot more as well. So, head over, hit the chat bubble, or connect with me on LinkedIn, Anthony Rose, and delighted to help. And I can't say that reviewing pitch decks is scalable or vibe coding a new version of your website is scalable, but I always love to be helpful as far as possible.
We can automate that, don't worry. And I can vouch for SeedLegals. We are building the new community called Vibe Space, New York based and all. And We have been using SeedLegal software for, I guess, 4 or 5 months now, so that's going great. I can vouch for that. If you want to hear more about that, what's Vibe Space, what they're doing at VentureMind, what's the community is about, subscribe here to this calendar if you haven't yet, luma.com/venturemind, and you will receive all of the invites and all of the information about these kind of interviews and events that we have all around the world. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Anthony, for coming today. This was a great interview, maybe the first of many. If you're not available, grab your AI agent, because we have a lot of content, a lot to cover, and today we only had a small slice of it. So thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed the interview, and I hope
thank
that
you.
everyone liked it.
Thank you so much. You could probably hear from my enthusiasm that I greatly enjoyed it. You threw me some curveball ones, but yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Not my fault. We get the questions from the audience, right? But thank you very much, Anthony. We are wrapping here. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.